In the heart of Evergreen Heights, where manicured lawns stretched like green carpets under a relentless summer sun, Elena Harper sat at the edge of her unmade bed, staring at a faded photograph on her nightstand. The image captured a moment from 3 years ago, her and Derek Langford, her fiancé, laughing under a cascade of cherry blossoms during their engagement party. Her smile then was radiant, unscarred by doubt. Now, at 28, that smile felt like a relic from a life she barely recognized. Elena was the kind of woman who blended into the background with effortless grace, long chestnut hair falling in soft waves, hazel eyes sparkling with quiet intelligence, a smile that could light up the gloomiest room. A freelance graphic designer, she poured her creativity into logos and websites for small businesses, dreaming of launching her own studio. Her engagement to Derek had once been the cornerstone of that dream, a promise of a shared future filled with love and ambition. But now, 3 years in, the fairy tale had soured. Derek, a finance major turned investment banker, had changed. Or perhaps he'd always been this way, and Elena had been too blinded by love to see it. His job at a mid-tier investment firm consumed him, or so he claimed. Late nights at the office became the norm. His texts grew curt, his touches rare. The modest diamond ring he'd given her, bought on credit, felt heavier each day, like an anchor dragging her into despair. Arguments flared over trivialities, forgotten anniversaries, his phone obsession during dinner. But beneath it lay a deeper rot. The perfume-scented collars, the secretive smiles at his screen, the late nights stretching into dawn. Elena ignored the signs at first. She was the devoted type, baking his favorite chocolate chip cookies after his bad days, planning surprise date nights to rekindle their spark. It's just a phase, she'd tell herself, forcing a smile in the mirror as she applied mascara. Her best friend, Mia, warned her repeatedly. He's changing, Elena. Or maybe he was always like this, and you're just seeing it now. But love, blind and stubborn, kept her tethered. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when the first irreparable crack appeared. Elena returned early from a client meeting, arms laden with groceries for a special dinner. Steak, Derek's favorite, with a bottle of Cabernet she'd saved for. The apartment was dim, the only light spilling from the bedroom door, slightly ajar. She heard voices, his, low and intimate, and a woman's, sultry and unfamiliar. Pushing the door open quietly, her world tilted. Derek, shirtless on their bed, was entangled with a woman whose auburn hair cascaded like a waterfall over his chest. Sophia Reynolds, though Elena didn't know her name yet, was all sharp angles and confidence, red lips curved in triumph, green eyes flashing with something predatory. They didn't notice her at first, lost in their rhythm, but when Derek's head snapped up, his face drained of color. "Elena," he gasped, scrambling to cover himself. Sophia sat up slowly, unashamed, wrapping the sheet around her like a queen's robe. "Oops," she said, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "The fiancé returns." "Fiancé," Elena corrected automatically, her voice a hollow echo. The grocery bags slipped from her numb fingers, apples rolling across the floor like escaped prisoners. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She stood frozen, the rain pattering against the window like applause for her humiliation. Derek babbled excuses. It was a mistake, baby, a one-time thing. But Elena was already turning away. She grabbed her coat from the hook, the door slamming behind her with a finality that echoed in her bones. That night, she crashed at Mia's, sobbing into pillows until dawn. By morning, the tears had dried, replaced by a steely resolve. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't break. She'd rebuild, brick by silent brick. The breakup was messy. Derek alternated between groveling apologies and angry accusations, blaming her for letting herself go, for not being exciting enough. Elena packed her things in silence, leaving the ring on the kitchen counter like a discarded receipt. "We're done," she said simply, her voice steady for the first time in months. He didn't fight it. Perhaps he was relieved, free to pursue his upgrade without guilt. In the weeks that followed, Elena threw herself into work, her designs sharper, more innovative. Clients raved, referrals poured in. And then, at a tech conference Mia recommended for networking, she met Alexander Voss. He was speaking on a panel about AI and creative industries, his presence commanding the stage without effort. Tall, with broad shoulders and piercing blue eyes framed by dark lashes, he spoke with a quiet authority that made the room lean in. Elena, seated in the back, sketched notes in her journal, captivated by his words and the way he listened to questions, truly engaged. After the session, as the crowd milled, he spotted her. "That sketch in your book. Mind if I see?" he asked, approaching with a disarming smile. Flustered, she showed him her doodle of the panel's flow chart, infused with artistic flair. His eyes lit up. "You're talented. Elena Harper, right? I saw your name on the attendee list." They talked for hours, about design's role in tech, the loneliness of entrepreneurship, the serendipity of connections. He was 32, the founder of Voss Innovations, a billion-dollar empire in sustainable AI and green tech. But he downplayed it, joking about his garage startup days and failed prototypes. "Success is just persistence in disguise," he said. By the end of the conference, he had her number. "Dinner sometime," he proposed. Elena hesitated, still raw from Derek, but something in his gaze, steady and kind, made her say yes. What began as coffee evolved into lunches, then weekends away. Alexander was everything Derek wasn't. Attentive, supportive, challenging her to dream bigger without overshadowing her. He celebrated her small wins, like landing a big client, with quiet toasts and handwritten notes. "You're a force," he'd say, his hand warm on hers. 6 months after the conference, on a secluded vineyard in Napa Valley, under a canopy of stars, he proposed. Not with fanfare, but with a simple platinum band embedded with a flawless emerald, her birthstone. "Elena, you've rewritten my code. Marry me. Not because I need you, but because with you, everything makes sense." Tears streaming, she whispered, "Yes." They wed in a private ceremony the next day, just them, an officiant, and the vines as witnesses. It was intimate, profound, a new beginning untainted by the past. But they kept it secret. Elena needed time to fully sever ties with Derek, who still hounded her with texts, begging for one more chance. Alexander understood. "When you're ready, the world will celebrate us." Now, as the college reunion approached, Elena saw it as the perfect stage. Derek had been blowing up her phone about attending together, his tone laced with false nostalgia. Unbeknownst to him, Sophia had slithered into the picture fully, their affair now a brazen relationship. Whispers from mutual friends confirmed it. Derek planned to flaunt Sophia, to rub Elena's nose in his better life. Let him, Elena thought. She'd arrive as his ex, poised and unbroken, and leave as Mrs. Voss, radiant and redeemed. The apartment Elena shared with Mia was a cozy haven of mismatched furniture and vibrant art, posters from indie films, Elena's sketches framed on the walls. It was a far cry from the sterile modern space she'd left with Derek, but it felt like freedom. On the morning of the reunion week, sunlight filtered through sheer curtains as Elena sat at the kitchen table, nursing a mug of chamomile tea. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Derek again. "Hey, babe. Reunion this weekend. Still on for going together? It'll be like old times. Miss you." She stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Old times," she muttered, the words tasting like ash. Mia, flipping pancakes at the stove, glanced over, her spatula pausing mid-air. "Him again? Block the jerk already." Elena shook her head, deleting the message. "He thinks he can waltz back in. As if I haven't heard about Sophia." Mia's eyes narrowed, her protective instincts flaring. "The office intern? God, he's so predictable. Block him, Elena. Or better yet, string him along. Make him sweat." Tempting, but Elena had a better plan. "No, I'll go. Let him think he's got the upper hand." Then, she trailed off, a sly smile playing on her lips. Mia raised an eyebrow, flipping a pancake with a flourish. Then Alexander swoops in like a knight in a private jet? Spill, girl. Elena chuckled, warmth flooding her at the mention of her husband. Alexander Voss had been her rock through the divorce proceedings, discreet, efficient lawyers ensuring she walked away with her dignity and a fair settlement. Something like that. "It's not about revenge, Mia. It's about closure. I need to look him in the eye and know I'm free." Mia slid a plate of pancakes toward her, drizzled with maple syrup. You're a badass. But you sure you're ready for his circus? Word is, he's parading Sophia like a trophy. Elena's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed steady. Let him. It'll make the reveal sweeter. The day unfolded in a whirlwind of preparation. Elena met a client for a branding session, her ideas flowing like never before. This logo captures your essence, she told the startup founder, a young woman launching an eco-fashion line. Bold, sustainable, unapologetic. The founder beamed, signing the contract on the spot, her enthusiasm fueling Elena's drive. As she packed her portfolio, her phone lit up with a text from Alexander. Lunch at the bistro? Can't stop thinking about you. Her heart skipped. On my way. The bistro was their spot, a quaint French place with outdoor seating overlooking a fountain. Alexander was already there, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking every bit the powerful CEO, yet utterly approachable. At 32, he was the wunderkind of Silicon Valley, having built Voss Innovations from a garage startup into a global powerhouse in sustainable AI and green tech. Yet his success hadn't hardened him. It had honed his empathy. He stood as she approached, pulling her into a hug that lingered, his cologne a comforting mix of sandalwood and citrus. You look stunning, he murmured, kissing her temple. As always. They ordered croque-monsieurs and salads, conversation ebbing between work and whimsy. Alexander shared updates on Voss Innovations, a new AI project for carbon tracking that could revolutionize climate tech. But enough about me. How's the studio dream? Elena lit up, her hazel eyes sparkling. I'm close. Got 3 new clients this month. With your encouragement, she added with a wink, I think I can launch by year's end. He reached across the table, squeezing her hand, his thumb tracing the hidden emerald ring she wore on a chain under her blouse. You'll crush it, and I'll be your first investor, if you'll have me. Partner, she corrected softly, her voice warm with conviction. Always partners. As they lingered over espresso, Elena broached the reunion. Derek's pushing to go together. I said yes, to keep the peace until I dropped the bomb. Alexander's jaw tightened imperceptibly, a flicker of protectiveness in his blue eyes. But his voice remained even. You're sure? I can buy out the venue if you want to skip the drama. She shook her head, her chestnut waves catching the sunlight. No, I need to face it. Show him, and myself, that I'm not that girl anymore. He nodded, pride evident in his gaze. Then I'll be there. Discreetly. Your shadow, remember. They parted with a kiss that promised more. Elena floating back to her studio, a small rented space downtown cluttered with sketches and a drafting table. But the afternoon brought an unwelcome visitor, Sophia Reynolds, bold as brass, striding and unannounced. She was stunning in a way that screamed effort. Perfect makeup, a tight blouse that left little to the imagination, auburn hair cascading in calculated waves. Her designer heels clicked on the hardwood, announcing her presence like a war drum. Elena, right? Sophia said, feigning sweetness as she perched on the edge of the desk, crossing her legs. Derek's mentioned you. I'm Sophia. Elena looked up from her computer, masking her disgust with a polite smile. What do you want? Sophia's green eyes glinted with malice. Just girl talk. Derek and I are official now. Thought you should know before the reunion. We're going together. It'll be fun. The implication hung heavy, a blade aimed at Elena's heart. She leaned back, calm as a still lake. Fun. Sure. Enjoy. Sophia's smile faltered at the lack of reaction, her confidence wavering. You're taking it well. No tears. No begging him back. Elena met her gaze steadily, her voice cool. Why would I? He's your problem now. Sophia huffed, standing abruptly, her heels clicking as she sauntered out. But Elena caught the insecurity in her posture, the way she glanced back, expecting a breakdown that never came. The encounter only sharpened Elena's resolve. Sophia thought she could intimidate her, but she'd underestimated the woman she was trying to crush. That evening, Elena confided in her older sister, Lila, over a video call. Lila, a no-nonsense lawyer in Chicago, listened with furrowed brows, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun. That which has nerve, but you're handling it like a pro. Remember our family motto, rise above the mud. Elena laughed, the tension easing. Speaking of, Alexander's motto is code it, conquer it. He's all in. Lila's eyes softened. He sounds like the real deal. Unlike Derek, who was always chasing the next shiny thing. As the call ended, Elena slipped into a bubble bath, the steam curling around her like a protective veil. She thought of the reunion, the glittering hall, the old faces, Derek's smug grin. But this time, she wouldn't be the punchline. She was the author, rewriting the ending. Across town, in Derek's sleek bachelor pad with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist decor, he and Sophia plotted like villains in a bad soap opera. She'll be devastated, Derek said, pouring scotch, his eyes gleaming with cruel anticipation. Showing up with you? Priceless. Sophia clinked her glass against his, her red lips curling. And I'll make sure every girl there knows I won you. Poor Elena, frumpy and forgotten. Derek grinned, pulling her close. To new chapters. But as they tumbled into bed, a nagging doubt flickered in his mind. Elena had seemed different in their last call. Stronger. He pushed it away. She was the same girl he'd left crying. Nothing more. Elena's college days at Evergreen University were a tapestry of vibrant memories, woven with the golden threads of first love. She remembered the first time Derek said, "I love you," during a snowstorm, huddled in his dorm room with hot cocoa and bad movies. They'd been watching a rom-com, laughing at the cliches, when he turned to her, his brown eyes soft in the dim light. "You're my everything," he'd whispered, his hand cupping her cheek. She believed it, her heart soaring as she melted into his embrace. Their romance was a whirlwind of late-night study sessions in the library, spontaneous road trips to hidden beaches, and promises of a shared future whispered under the stars. They'd met during freshman orientation, a chaotic day of name tags and nervous laughter. Elena, a shy art student, was sketching in the grass, her notebook filled with doodles of the campus oak tree. Derek, a charismatic finance major, plopped down beside her, stealing a French fry from her lunch. "Mind if I critique your masterpiece?" he'd teased, pointing at her sketch. His confidence disarmed her, and soon they were inseparable, sharing coffee in the quad, dancing at frat parties, planning a life together. Derek proposed under that same oak tree their senior year, with his grandmother's modest diamond ring, his voice trembling with sincerity. "Marry me, Elena. Let's build something epic." But cracks had formed early, subtle at first. Derek's ambition outpaced his affection. Internships turned into all-nighters, parties into networking events where he'd flirt shamelessly for contacts. Elena forgave, always the peacemaker. "He's building our future," she'd tell Mia, who rolled her eyes but held her tongue. By their engagement, Derek's attention had shifted, less to Elena, more to his image. He craved the spotlight, the envy of peers, the validation of being the guy who had it all. Sophia Reynolds' backstory was less idyllic. Raised in a small town where ambition was a luxury, she'd clawed her way to the city with a scholarship and a chip on her shoulder. At 26, she was a vision of calculated allure, sharp cheekbones, auburn hair, green eyes that could cut glass. As an intern at Derek's firm, she saw him as a ticket up, a man whose ego could be stroked to her advantage. Their affair began with harmless lunches, her laughter lingering too long, her hand brushing his arm. It escalated to stolen moments in the office supply closet, her whispers planting seeds of discontent about Elena's plainness. Sophia thrived on conquest, and Derek, flattered by her attention, fell hard, mistaking her manipulation for passion. Present day, Elena's preparations for the reunion intensified. She shopped for her gown at a boutique downtown, bypassing flashy designer labels for a sapphire silk number from a local designer. The dress was elegant, understated, hugging her figure without screaming for attention. At the salon, her stylist, Rosa, cooed over her transformation, trimming her chestnut hair into a sleek bob that framed her face with sophistication. "Honey, whoever hurt you is going to regret it. You look like a goddess." Elena smiled, her reflection steady in the mirror. "Not revenge, just me." Rosa winked, brushing blush across her cheeks. "That's the spirit. Knock him dead." That night, Alexander took her to dinner at a rooftop restaurant, the city sprawling below like a sea of lights. The restaurant was a hidden gem, with candlelit tables and a view of the skyline that made Elena's heart ache with possibility. Alexander, in a tailored blazer, looked effortlessly powerful, his blue eyes softening as he watched her. "Tell me about your college days," he prompted, curious, as they sipped Pinot Noir. Elena shared stories. The art shows where her paintings drew quiet praise, the late-night painting sessions in the studio, the way Derek had proposed under the oak tree. "It was romantic then," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "Now, it's a memory, like a painting I've outgrown." He listened intently, his hand resting over hers. "I get it. I was the nerd in the back, coding apps while others partied. Lost my first love to a better guy, a rich kid who promised her the world. Taught me to value quiet strength." Their hands intertwined, her emerald ring glinting under the table's candlelight. "Like mine." "Exactly," he said, his smile warm. "You're a masterpiece, Elena. Don't let anyone dim your colors." The conversation shifted to the reunion. "I heard from Tara. Derek's telling everyone he's bringing a surprise." "It's Sophia, isn't it?" Elena asked, her voice steady but her fingers tightening around her glass. Alexander nodded, his expression darkening. "Probably. He's been loud about it at the firm, from what my contacts say. Wants to make a splash." "Let him try," Elena said, her jaw set. "I'm not the girl he expects to see." Alexander leaned closer, his voice low. "You're a force, Mrs. Voss. And I'll be there, in the shadows, ready if you need me." The night before the reunion, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced her bedroom, the sapphire gown laid out like armor on a chair. Derek texted again. "Pick you up at 7. We're something nice. Don't embarrass me." She replied, "See you then." In the morning, she dressed with care, the gown flowing like midnight water, hair in loose curls, minimal makeup highlighting her natural glow. A simple necklace from Alexander, a pendant with a tiny circuit board etched in gold, rested against her collarbone, her secret talisman. She looked in the mirror, her hazel eyes steady. "You're enough," she whispered, echoing Alexander's words. Derek arrived in a rented limo, Sophia on his arm in an emerald green gown that clashed with everything. Too tight, too loud. "Wow, Elena," he said, eyeing her with a mix of surprise and condescension. "You clean up okay?" Sophia smirked, her red lips curling. "Cute dress. Vintage. Timeless," Elena replied evenly, sliding into the car. The ride was torture, Derek and Sophia canoodling, dropping hints about their hot weekends in Miami, their laughter grating like nails on a chalkboard. Elena stared out the window, her mind on Alexander, who was already at the alumni hall, mingling as a donor. She clutched the pendant, grounding herself in its quiet promise. The stage was set, the tension palpable. Elena wasn't walking into a trap. She was walking into her triumph. The week before the reunion was a delicate dance of preparation and restraint for Elena Harper. Her apartment, shared with Mia, buzzed with the quiet energy of transformation. Mornings began with yoga, not for vanity, but for the clarity it brought, each stretch a reminder of her resilience. Afternoons were spent at her studio, refining designs for a new client, a startup focused on ethical fashion, a project that mirrored her own values of authenticity and purpose. Evenings were reserved for Alexander, their stolen moments a balm against the storm brewing in her heart. On Tuesday, Elena met Alexander at his penthouse, a sleek oasis of glass and steel overlooking the city skyline. The space was a blend of minimalist luxury, white walls adorned with abstract art, a grand piano in the corner, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the twinkling city below. Alexander greeted her with a kiss that melted her defenses, his hands steady on her waist, his blue eyes searching hers for any trace of doubt. "You nervous?" he asked, pouring her a glass of chilled white wine, its crisp aroma mingling with the faint scent of his sandalwood cologne. "A little," she admitted, sinking into the plush sofa, the leather cool against her skin. "But excited too. It's time to end this charade with Derek." Alexander sat beside her, his presence a steady anchor. "You don't have to do this alone. I can be there front and center if you want." She shook her head, sipping the wine, its tartness grounding her. "No, I need to walk in as Elena Harper, his ex, before I leave as Elena Voss, your wife." It's not about proving a point to him. It's about proving it to myself. He nodded, his thumb brushing the back of her hand, where the emerald ring hung hidden on its chain. You're the strongest woman I know. But if they laugh, if they try to hurt you, then they laugh at fools, she said, echoing his earlier words, a small smile curving her lips. And pity is for the weak. I've risen above that. They spent the afternoon planning. Not revenge, but strategy. Alexander would attend the reunion incognito, mingling as a guest investor among the alumni donors. I'll be your shadow, he promised, his voice low and sure. Ready if you need me, invisible if you don't. As evening fell, they shared a quiet dinner on the balcony, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. Alexander shared stories from his early days, nights coding until dawn, the betrayal of a business partner who nearly bankrupted his startup. I learned then that true power is in forgiveness, not grudges, he said, his fork pausing over a plate of grilled salmon. Let Derek dig his own grave. You just keep building your empire. Elena nodded, inspired. Her own empire was budding, a design firm focused on ethical branding for tech startups. Alexander had offered seed funding, but she insisted on earning it her way, through talent and grit. Partners, he had agreed, beaming, his pride in her palpable. Back at the apartment, Elena faced a different reality. Derek's texts grew bolder, his false charm thinly veiling his intent. Can't wait for the reunion, babe. It'll be fun to show up together. Where's something hot? The audacity made her stomach churn, but she replied coolly, looking forward to it. Mia, sprawled on the couch with a glass of Merlot, snorted when Elena showed her the message. He's delusional. Thinks he's still got you on a leash. Let him think that, Elena said, folding laundry with deliberate calm. It'll make his fall harder. Wednesday brought another surprise. A call from Elena's mother, Clara, who lived in a small coastal town an hour away. Clara's voice was warm, but laced with concern. Lila told me about Derek and this. Sophia girl, you sure you want to go to this reunion, sweetheart? Elena smiled, picturing her mother's kind eyes, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun. I'm sure, Mom. It's not about him anymore. It's about me. Clara sighed, the sound crackling through the phone. You've always been stronger than you know. Just be careful, and tell that Alexander he's invited for Sunday dinner. Elena laughed, promising to pass along the invitation. Her mother's support, quiet but unwavering, bolstered her. She spent the evening sketching, her pencil dancing across the page, creating a logo that felt like a self-portrait, bold lines, soft curves, a burst of color symbolizing rebirth. Thursday was for final preparations. Elena visited the boutique again, trying on the sapphire gown. It flowed like water, hugging her curves without ostentation, the deep blue complementing her hazel eyes. She paired it with simple pearl studs, her mother's, and nude heels, rejecting flashy accessories for understated elegance. At the salon, Rosa trimmed her bob, adding soft waves that framed her face like a halo. You're gonna slay, Rosa said, wielding her curling iron like a sword. That night, Elena met Alexander for a late coffee, needing his calm before the storm. They sat in a cozy cafe, rain pattering against the windows, the aroma of espresso grounding them. What if I freeze? She asked, stirring her latte. What if I see them together and lose it? Alexander leaned forward, his gaze steady. You won't. You faced worse than Derek's ego and come out stronger. But if you need me, I'm one step away. She reached for his hand, the pendant necklace warm against her chest. Thank you for believing in me. He smiled, that rare, breathtaking smile he saved for her. I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. But that's okay. I'll believe enough for both of us. Friday night, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced her bedroom, the gown laid out like a knight's armor. Derek's final text came at midnight. Tomorrow's gonna be epic. Don't flake. She didn't reply, instead slipping into bed, Alexander's goodnight text lighting up her phone. Dream of our future. You've got this. Sleep came fitfully, dreams mingling betrayal with triumph. In one, she danced through flames, Derek and Sophia reduced to ashes at her feet. She woke resolved. Tomorrow, she wouldn't burn, she'd illuminate. Across town, Sophia primped in her vanity, spraying perfume like war paint. Her emerald gown hung ready, a weapon of seduction. "This is our night," she murmured to her reflection. Derek, in his bachelor pad, toasted himself with scotch. "To upgrades," he muttered, oblivious to the storm he courted. Elena, however, was no longer prey. She was a phoenix, wings unfolding, ready to soar. The downtown cafe was a chic haven of exposed brick and Edison bulbs, its air thick with the scent of roasted coffee and ambition. Derek Langford leaned back in a leather booth, his tailored blazer unbuttoned, a smug grin playing on his lips as he sipped an overpriced latte. Across from him, Sophia Reynolds twirled a strand of auburn hair, her green eyes glinting with a thrill of conspiracy. They were plotting, their voices low and conspiratorial, as if orchestrating a heist rather than a social ambush. "It has to be perfect," Sophia said, her manicured nails tapping the table. "We walk in late, arm in arm, all eyes on us. I'll wear the emerald gown, tight, low-cut, impossible to ignore. Elena will look like a nun in comparison." Derek chuckled, his ego swelling at the thought. "She'll be in some frumpy dress, probably blue. She always loved blue. We'll make her feel invisible." Sophia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a purr. "Oh, I've got plans. I'll accidentally spill a glass of red wine on her. Oops, clumsy me. She'll be mortified, running to the bathroom in tears." Derek's grin widened, his brown eyes gleaming with malice. "And during the toasts, I'll say something about new beginnings and cutting dead weight. Subtle, but she'll get it. Everyone will." Sophia clinked her coffee mug against his, her smile sharp as a blade. "To crushing her," she said, and they laughed, oblivious to the barista's sidelong glance. Their plan was a performance, a cruel ballet designed to humiliate Elena Harper, the woman Derek had discarded like an outdated phone. In their minds, she was still the broken girl who'd fled their apartment, apples rolling across the floor. But across town, in the cozy chaos of her shared apartment with Mia, Elena was crafting a different kind of performance, one of quiet strength. Her evenings were spent refining her business plan for her design studio, Harper Creative. Spread across the kitchen table were sketches, budgets, and a pitch deck for potential investors, each page a testament to her growing ambition. She'd landed another client that day, a tech startup focused on renewable energy, a perfect match for her ethos of ethical branding. As she tweaked the logo's font, her phone buzzed with a message from Alexander. "Proud of you. Dinner tomorrow before the big night." She smiled, typing back, "Wouldn't miss it." Alexander's support was a constant, a lighthouse in her storm. He never pushed, never overshadowed, only amplified her light. That evening, Mia insisted on a girls' night to bolster Elena's spirits. They gathered at a local wine bar with Tara, their old college friend, and Lila, who'd flown in from Chicago for the weekend. The bar was warm, its wooden tables cluttered with glasses and charcuterie boards, laughter mingling with the hum of a jazz trio. Mia raised a glass of Pinot Grigio, her eyes sparkling. To Elena, who's about to slay a dragon at this reunion. Lila, ever the protective older sister, clinked her glass. And to Alexander, who's got her back. Unlike that sleaze, Derek. Tara, who'd been quiet, leaned forward, her blonde curls bouncing. "I heard from Jake. Derek's been bragging about showing up with Sophia. They're planning something mean. Elena, you sure you're ready?" Elena sipped her wine, her hazel eyes steady. "I'm not just ready. I'm waiting for it. Let them play their game. I've got my own." The women cheered, their support wrapping around her like armor. As they swapped stories of college pranks and old crushes, Elena's mind drifted to a flashback of Sophia's rise at Derek's firm. She'd learned the details from a mutual colleague, Sarah, who'd left the firm in disgust. Sophia had started as an intern, her ambition a wildfire. She'd charmed senior partners, her laughter a calculated melody, her accidental touches disarming. When she set her sights on Derek, he was easy prey, flattered by her attention, resentful of Elena's quiet stability. Their affair had been a slow burn, fueled by Sophia's whispers. "You deserve someone who matches your fire, Derek. Not someone who holds you back." Back in the present, Elena pushed the memory aside, focusing on her friend's laughter. She didn't need to dwell on Sophia's tactics. They were irrelevant now. She was no longer the girl who'd cried herself to sleep. She was Elena Voss, wife to a man who saw her worth, a woman building an empire of her own. Friday morning brought a call from Clara, Elena's mother, her voice crackling with concern. "I know you're strong, sweetheart, but this reunion, it's a snake pit. You don't have to go." Elena, sketching at her studio, smiled. "I do, Mom. Not for Derek, but for me. I need to close that chapter." Clara sighed. "You've got your father's stubbornness. Just shine, okay? And bring Alexander to dinner Sunday." "Deal," Elena said, her heart warming. Her mother's love was a quiet force, like the ocean that shaped her coastal hometown, gentle but unyielding. That afternoon, Elena visited the boutique one last time, ensuring her gown fit perfectly. The sapphire silk shimmered under the shop's lights, its simplicity a stark contrast to Sophia's loud glamour. "You're a vision," the shop owner said, adjusting a hem. "This dress doesn't wear you. You wear it." Elena nodded, her reflection in the mirror a stranger's, strong, poised, unbreakable. She spent the evening with Alexander at his penthouse, going over their plan. He'd enter the reunion late, blending in with the donors, his presence a silent promise. "If you need me, just look my way," he said, his hand cupping her face. "I know," she replied, kissing him softly. "But I need to walk in alone first. It's the only way." He understood, his eyes full of pride. "You're going to light up that room, Elena. And I'll be there, cheering from the shadows." As she left, clutching her pendant necklace, Elena felt the weight of the weekend settle. Derek and Sophia were plotting her downfall, but they were blind to her transformation. Tomorrow, she'd step into their trap, not as prey, but as a queen. The alumni hall at Evergreen University was a vision of opulence, its marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers that cast prismatic light across the room. Tables groaned under the weight of gourmet hors d'oeuvres, mini lobster rolls, truffle-infused canapes, flutes of champagne bubbling like liquid gold. A jazz band played softly in the corner, their melodies weaving a sophisticated backdrop to the chatter of classmates reuniting after a decade. The air buzzed with nostalgia and one-upmanship, old friends air-kissing, exchanging business cards, their laughter a veneer over midlife insecurities. Derek Langford and Sophia Reynolds arrived fashionably late, as planned, their entrance choreographed to steal the spotlight. Sophia's emerald gown clung to her curves, its plunging neckline drawing gasps, her auburn hair cascading in calculated waves. Derek, in a tailored black suit, exuded the confidence of a man who believed he'd won at life. He pulled Sophia close, his arm possessive around her waist, as they swept into the room. Heads turned, whispers rippling. "Is that Derek Langford? Who's the bombshell? Elena's ex? Damn, he traded up." "Derek," boomed Jake, a former frat brother, clapping him on the back. "You look like $1,000,000. And who's this?" "Sophia," Derek said proudly, his grin wide. "My fiancé." Sophia flashed a megawatt smile, basking in the attention, her green eyes scanning the room for Elena. "Fiancé," she echoed, holding up her left hand to show a gaudy ring Derek had bought on credit. The crowd cooed, their envy feeding her ego. She leaned into Derek, whispering, "No sign of her yet. Good. Let her stew." Elena Harper entered alone 10 minutes later, her sapphire gown flowing like midnight water, its understated elegance a stark contrast to Sophia's flash. Her chestnut hair, styled in loose waves, framed her face, and her minimal makeup highlighted her natural glow. The pearl studs, her mother's, glinted softly, and the pendant necklace from Alexander rested against her collarbone, a quiet talisman. She didn't rush. She glided, her chin high, exuding a serenity that drew eyes without demand. Elena Harper, Tara, her old sorority sister, exclaimed, rushing over for a hug. "You look incredible. Life treating you well." Elena smiled, her hazel eyes warm. "Better than ever," she said, her voice steady. She mingled effortlessly, sharing laughs with old friends, collecting compliments like quiet victories. No one mentioned Derek directly, but the air hummed with curiosity about her glow. "What's your secret?" a former classmate asked, eyeing her radiance. "Just living my truth," Elena replied, her smile enigmatic. Derek spotted her from across the room, his grin faltering for a split second. There she is, he muttered to Sophia, who smirked, adjusting her gown to draw more eyes. Look at her, trying so hard. Pathetic. Sophia nodded, her eyes narrowing. Let's give her the show. As the evening progressed, Derek and Sophia worked the room, their performance polished but cruel. Sophia, accidentally, bumped into Tara's group, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. Oh, Elena's here? Alone? Poor thing. Must be tough seeing Derek move on. Tara shrugged, her loyalty to Elena unwavering. She seems fine to me. Better than fine. Derek, emboldened by champagne, cornered a group including Elena's old art professor, Dr. Ellis. Life's short, right? He said loudly, his arm around Sophia. Gotta grab the best while you can. He gestured to Sophia, who preened. Traded in the old model for this upgrade. Awkward chuckles followed, but Elena, overhearing from a nearby table, didn't flinch. She raised her glass in a mock toast from afar. To upgrades, she said softly, her voice carrying just enough to sting. The group tittered, the joke turning on Derek, who flushed, his confidence wavering. Sophia, sensing the shift, doubled down. She sauntered toward Elena, her heels clicking like a countdown. Darling, you clean up nice, she cooed, her tone laced with condescension. Brave of you to come alone. Elena met her gaze evenly, her smile unshaken. Alone? Hardly. But thank you. The barb fell flat, Sophia's smirk faltering. She retreated, flustered, whispering to Derek, she's not breaking. What the hell? Alexander Voss watched from the sidelines, blending seamlessly with the donors in a tailored tux. His presence was subtle but potent, his blue eyes tracking Elena with quiet pride. He'd arrived early, shaking hands with alumni board members, his cover as a guest investor flawless. No one suspected the billionaire CEO was there for anything but philanthropy. Yet, he caught Elena's eye across the room, a silent nod passing between them, a promise of strength. The jazz band struck up a livelier tune, and the room's energy shifted. Informal toasts began, alumni raising glasses to old memories and new successes. Derek seized the moment, clinking his flute to draw attention. To moving on from the past, he declared, his eyes locking on Elena, his voice dripping with intent. To new beginnings and leaving behind what holds us back. The room murmured approval, but Elena raised her glass, her voice clear and calm. To futures brighter than we imagined. The crowd's applause was louder for her, their smiles genuine. Sophia gripped Derek's arm, her nails digging in. This isn't going as planned, she hissed. Elena sipped her champagne, her heart steady. The stage was set, the spotlight shifting. She wasn't the broken girl they expected. She was a force, and the night was only beginning. The alumni hall pulsed with the rhythm of the jazz band, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over the crowd as the reunion reached its peak. Elena Harper moved through the room like a quiet tide, her sapphire gown catching the light with every step, her poise drawing admiring glances. Classmates who'd once overlooked her in college now gravitated toward her, sensing a change they couldn't quite name. Elena, you're glowing, said Rachel, a former roommate, squeezing her arm. What's your secret? Elena smiled, her hazel eyes sparkling with quiet confidence. Just living for myself, she said, her voice soft but sure. The answer was vague yet profound, sparking murmurs of intrigue. Whispers spread. She's thriving without him. Did you see her dress? She's not the shy art girl anymore. Derek Langford, stationed near the bar with Sophia Reynolds clinging to his arm, felt the shift like a drop in air pressure. His plan to humiliate Elena was unraveling, her serene presence stealing the spotlight he'd expected to own. Sophia's emerald gown, once a showstopper, now seemed garish next to Elena's elegance. Her attempts to undermine Elena were backfiring, each barb met with a calm deflection, each snide comment earning pitying glances from the crowd. Sophia, desperate to regain control, tried a bolder move. During a lull in the music, she accidentally bumped into Elena near a dessert table, a glass of red wine sloshing dangerously close to Elena's gown. "Oh my goodness, I'm so clumsy," Sophia exclaimed, her voice dripping with false apology, her eyes gleaming with intent. Elena stepped back gracefully, the wine missing her dress by inches, landing harmlessly on the floor. "No harm done," she said, her smile unwavering, her tone polite but laced with steel. The crowd nearby tittered, a few shaking their heads at Sophia's obvious ploy. "Trying too hard," Tara muttered to Rachel, who nodded in agreement. Sophia's cheeks flushed, her confidence cracking. She retreated to Derek, her heels clicking furiously. "She's not breaking," she hissed, her green eyes flashing. "Why isn't she breaking?" Derek, nursing his third champagne, shrugged, his arrogance faltering. "She's putting on a show. It's an act." But doubt crept into his voice. Elena wasn't the tearful, defeated girl he'd expected. She was commanding the room, without even trying. Elena, meanwhile, mingled with ease, sharing laughs with old friends over college memories, late-night study sessions, disastrous group projects, the time they'd snuck into the dean's garden for a midnight picnic. She spoke without bitterness, her stories tinged with fondness rather than regret. "Remember when we thought we'd conquer the world by 25? She said to Jake, who chuckled, his eyes warm with nostalgia. "You're doing all right, Harper," he said, clinking his glass against hers. "Better than most of us." Her mind flashed back to the months after the breakup, when she'd sat in a therapist's office, a cozy space with sage-green walls and a box of tissues she rarely used. Dr. Patel, a kind woman with a knack for cutting through noise, had guided her through the pain. "Your worth isn't tied to Derek's choices," she'd said. "You're enough, Elena. Always have been." Those sessions had rebuilt her, brick by brick, teaching her to reclaim her voice, her dreams, her power. Now, standing in the alumni hall, she felt the weight of that truth anchoring her. Across the room, Alexander Voss watched, his presence still unnoticed by most. He leaned against a pillar, a glass of sparkling water in hand, his tailored tux blending with the donor crowd. His blue eyes tracked Elena, pride swelling in his chest. She didn't need him to rescue her. She was her own hero. But he was ready, his silent promise a heartbeat away. Sophia, growing desperate, tried another tactic. She approached a group of Elena's old art classmates, her voice loud enough to carry. "It's so sad, isn't it? Elena coming alone, trying to act like she's over Derek. I mean, who could get over him?" She laughed, tossing her hair, expecting agreement. But Dr. Ellis, the art professor, raised an eyebrow. "Seems to me Elena's doing just fine. Some people don't need to cling to someone to shine." The group nodded, their smiles tight, and Sophia's face burned as she retreated. Derek, sensing the tide turning, grew reckless. He pulled Sophia onto the dance floor, spinning her ostentatiously, hoping to reclaim the spotlight. But the crowd's eyes drifted to Elena, who laughed with Tara over a shared memory, her presence magnetic without effort. "She's different," Rachel whispered to Jake. "Like she's found her place in the world." Elena caught Alexander's eye across the room, a fleeting glance that grounded her. His nod was subtle, a reminder of their plan. She sipped her champagne, her heart steady despite the chaos Derek and Sophia were trying to sow. Another flashback surfaced. Her first date with Alexander, a quiet dinner at a hole-in-the-wall Italian place, where they'd talked until closing, the waiter jokingly shooing them out. "You're not like anyone I've met," he'd said, his hand brushing hers. That memory fueled her now, a reminder of the love that had healed her. As the band shifted to a slower tune, Sophia made one last desperate move. She approached Elena directly, her smile venomous. "You're trying so hard to look okay," she said, her voice low but sharp. "But we all know you're dying inside. Seeing Derek with me." Elena met her gaze, her expression calm, almost pitying. "You're trying too hard, Sophia," she said softly. "You don't need to tear me down to feel tall. It's not working." The words landed like a slap, Sophia's mouth opening and closing without sound. The crowd nearby overheard, their murmurs turning to soft laughter, not at Elena's expense, but Sophia's. Elena turned away, joining Tara's group, her heart light. The tide had turned, and she was riding its crest. The alumni hall's dance floor gleamed under the chandeliers, the jazz band slow, sultry melody inviting couples to sway in its rhythm. Elena Harper stood near a table, laughing with Tara and Rachel, her sapphire gown catching the light like a midnight sea. Her poise had shifted the room's energy, her quiet confidence outshining Derek and Sophia's loud performance. The crowd's whispers now favored her. Elena's killing it. She's a whole new woman. And Derek's plan to humiliate her was crumbling like sand. Alexander Voss chose this moment to step into the light. He'd been a shadow all evening, blending with the donors in his tailored tux, his presence unnoticed but potent. Now, he crossed the room with purpose, his broad shoulders cutting through the crowd, his blue eyes locked on Elena. The air shifted, conversations hushing as heads turned. "Is that Alexander Voss?" someone murmured. "The tech billionaire?" He stopped before Elena, his smile warm and private, as if the room held only them. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Voss?" he asked, his voice clear, the title deliberate. The gasp was collective, a ripple of shock spreading like wildfire. "Mrs. Voss, Mary, Tim." Elena's hand found his, her emerald ring, now on her finger, no longer hidden, glinting as she stepped into his embrace. The crowd parted, the dance floor clearing, as if by command, the band's melody swelling to match the moment. Derek Langford froze near the bar, his champagne flute trembling in his hand, his face draining of color. Sophia Reynolds clung to his arm, her green eyes wide with disbelief. "Husband," she hissed, her voice cracking. "She's married to Alexander Voss." Elena and Alexander moved in perfect sync, his hand steady on her waist, her gown flowing like water. Their chemistry was undeniable, a quiet symphony of trust and love. Elena's heart raced, not with fear, but with triumph, her hazel eyes meeting Alexander's with a spark of joy. "You're stealing the show, Mrs. Voss," he murmured, spinning her gently. "We are," she replied, her voice soft but sure, her smile radiant. Flashbacks flooded her mind as they danced. Their secret wedding in Napa Valley, a vineyard bathed in twilight, the officiant's words blending with the rustle of vines. Alexander had knelt before her, his proposal simple. "You're my missing code, Elena. Marry me." She'd said yes through tears, their vows a promise of partnership, not possession. They kept it quiet, not out of shame but to protect her healing, to let her sever ties with Derek on her terms. Now, those terms were hers to dictate. The crowd erupted in applause as the song ended, classmates swarming Elena with congratulations. "You're married to Voss." Rachel squealed, hugging her. "How did you keep this quiet?" "Fate and a conference," Alexander answered smoothly, his arm around Elena. "She's the genius behind my latest app designs. I'm the lucky one." Elena blushed, but her chin stayed high, her confidence unshaken. Old friends peppered them with questions. How they met, when they wed, each answer cementing their bond as real, profound, enviable. Dr. Ellis, the art professor, clapped Elena's shoulder. "You've always been a masterpiece, my dear. Now the world sees it." Derek finally approached, his face ashen, his suit rumpled from nervous tugging. "Elena, what the hell?" he stammered, his voice hoarse. "You are married?" "To him." She turned, her expression serene, almost kind. "Hello, Derek. Meet my husband, Alexander Voss." The word husband landed like a bomb, shattering the last of Derek's composure. Sophia's mouth gaped, her emerald gown suddenly garish in the room's warm light. "Husband," she sputtered. "But we were—" "Past tense," Elena said gently, her voice free of malice. "I wish you both well." The crowd watched, the air thick with schadenfreude. Dr. Ellis clapped Derek on the back, his tone dry. "Tough luck, son. You let a gem slip." Derek tried to salvage the moment, raising his glass for a slurred toast. To new paths. But it fell flat, the crowd's attention fixed on Elena and Alexander, who stood hand in hand, a united front. Sophia tugged at Derek's arm, her face flushed with humiliation. "Do something," she hissed, but he was paralyzed, his world imploding. Another flashback surfaced, Alexander's late-night calls during Elena's darkest days, his voice a lifeline through the phone. "You're not defined by his betrayal," he'd said. "You're defined by what you build next." That strength carried her now, her hand warm in his as they faced the room. Sophia made one last desperate jab, sidling up to Elena as the crowd dispersed. "You think this makes you better than me?" she whispered, her voice venomous. "You're still just." Dr. Ellis cut her off, his voice sharp. "Some people shine without stealing light. Young lady, take a lesson." Sophia flinched, retreating to Derek's side, her confidence shattered. The dance floor became Elena's coronation, her laughter mingling with Alexander's as they spun through another song. Classmates raised glasses, their toasts now for her, a woman who'd risen from ashes to radiance. Derek and Sophia slunk toward the exit, their grand plan reduced to rubble. As they left, the room's applause followed Elena, not them. In the limo Alexander had waiting, Elena leaned against him, the weight of the night lifting. "Proud of you," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "I feel free," she said, her voice a quiet triumph. The hall's lights faded behind them, but Elena's glow was just beginning. The fallout from the reunion was swift and merciless for Derek Langford. The alumni hall's glittering lights had barely dimmed before whispers of his humiliation spread like wildfire through Evergreen University's social circles. By Monday, his inbox was flooded with knowing glances disguised as emails. Colleagues at his investment firm, old classmates, even his boss, who'd heard through the grapevine about his disastrous attempt to upgrade at Elena's expense. The revelation of her marriage to Alexander Voss, a billionaire whose name carried weight in every boardroom, had turned Derek into a punchline. He sat in his bachelor pad, the sleek minimalism now feeling sterile, his phone silent except for debt collectors. Sophia had dumped him the morning after the reunion, her parting words cutting like glass. "You're not the catch I thought you were, Derek. Good luck." She'd stormed out, her emerald gown still crumpled in a corner, a relic of their failed plot. Derek poured himself another scotch, the burn doing little to dull the ache. He'd lost everything, his reputation, his fiancée, his pride. And for what? A fleeting thrill with a woman who'd used him as ruthlessly as he'd used Elena. Flashbacks haunted him, moments of betrayal that now seemed like warnings he'd ignored. There was the first time he'd cheated, a drunken fling at a conference 2 years into his engagement, brushed off as just stress. Then the late-night texts with colleagues, the flirtations he'd justified as networking. Elena had been his anchor, her quiet love a constant he'd taken for granted. He saw her now, in his mind's eye, standing serene at the reunion, her sapphire gown a beacon of strength. He'd misjudged her, and the cost was steep. Sophia, meanwhile, chased new marks with desperate fervor. She'd returned to her downtown loft, posting sultry selfies on social media, hoping to reclaim her allure. But her reputation as a homewrecker had spread, amplified by reunion gossip. Invitations to elite events dried up, her follower count stagnated, her mirror reflecting a woman whose charm was fading under scrutiny. She tried to pivot, applying for jobs at rival firms, but whispers of her tactics, using charm to climb, discarding loyalty, preceded her. Not a team player, one interviewer noted, closing her file. A flashback revealed Sophia's own insecurities, her childhood in a small town, where she'd been overlooked, fueling her hunger for attention. She'd seen Derek as a ladder, his ambition a mirror to her own. But now, without his clout, she was adrift, her schemes unraveling like cheap thread. She stared at her phone, scrolling through photos of the reunion, pausing on one of Elena and Alexander dancing, their love palpable. Envy twisted in her gut, but she pushed it down, vowing to find another target. Elena, meanwhile, returned to her life with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. She and Alexander spent the day after the reunion at his penthouse, curled up on the sofa, a fire crackling in the hearth. "You were incredible," he said, his hand tracing patterns on her arm. "The way you handled them, it was art." She laughed, nestling closer. "I just told the truth. That's all it took." They talked late into the night, planning their next steps, her studio launch, their upcoming trip to Tuscany. Elena called Mia and Lila, their cheers echoing through the phone. "You slayed, girl," Mia shouted, while Lila added, "I'm framing that moment for the family album." Monday brought work, but Elena tackled it with renewed vigor. Her studio buzzed with activity, new clients, a growing portfolio. She met with her latest hire, a young intern named Zoe, whose enthusiasm reminded Elena of her college self. "You're an inspiration," Zoe said shyly, clutching a sketch pad. "I want to be like you someday." Elena smiled, her heart full. "Be better than me," she said. "Build something that's yours." Across town, Derek's world continued to crumble. A major client pulled out, citing trust issues, a veiled reference to his tarnished image. Lawsuits from shady deals he'd brokered in his quest for status piled up, his lawyer warning of bankruptcy. He avoided mirrors, unable to face the man he'd become, a shadow of the charismatic college kid who'd once had it all. One evening, alone in his apartment, Derek found an old photo of Elena, tucked in a drawer from their college days. She was laughing, paint smudged on her cheek, her eyes bright with dreams. He traced her smile, a lump in his throat. He'd lost a diamond, settling for glass, and the realization was a knife in his gut. He tossed the photo aside, but it haunted him, a reminder of what he'd thrown away. Elena, meanwhile, drove to her mother's coastal home for Sunday dinner, Alexander at her side. Clara greeted them with hugs, her eyes misty as she saw Elena's glow. "You found your light again," she said, squeezing her hand. Over roast chicken and stories, Elena felt whole, her family's love a foundation she'd forgotten she had. As they drove back to the city, Alexander reached for her hand. "You're unstoppable," he said. "I'm just getting started," she replied, her voice a quiet vow. The reckoning wasn't hers. It was Derek's, and he'd built his own cage. 3 months after the reunion, Elena Harper, now Elena Voss, stood at the helm of Harper Creative, her design studio, as it launched to acclaim. The office, a bright loft in the city's arts district, buzzed with energy, whiteboards covered in sketches, laptops humming, a coffee machine whirring in the corner. Her team, small but fierce, included Zoe, the eager intern, and Marcus, a veteran designer who'd mentored Elena in her early freelance days. The launch party, held the previous week, had drawn tech founders, local artists, and even a few Voss Innovations execs, all toasting Elena's vision of ethical branding. "Your work's got soul," Marcus said, reviewing a campaign for a solar energy startup. "It's not just pretty, it means something." Elena smiled, adjusting a mock-up on her screen. "That's the goal. Make things that matter." Her confidence, once fragile, was now unshakable. The reunion had been a catalyst, not just for closing the door on Derek, but for opening one to her own potential. Clients flocked to her, drawn by her reputation for authenticity, a stark contrast to the glossy, soulless designs flooding the market. A tech startup had just signed a 6-figure contract, citing her human touch as the deciding factor. Alexander's support was quiet but profound. He'd offered seed funding early on, but Elena insisted on bootstrapping, using her savings and client revenue. "Partners," she'd reminded him, and he'd grinned, respecting her drive. Still, he connected her with key contacts, his network a subtle boost without overshadowing her. One evening, as they reviewed her business plan at his penthouse, he'd pointed to her revenue projections. "You're underestimating yourself. Double it. You're worth it." She'd laughed, but took his advice, her ambition soaring. Their partnership extended beyond business. In Tuscany, where they honeymooned, they'd spent days exploring vineyards, cooking pasta in a rented villa, and stargazing on a hilltop. One night, under a blanket of stars, Alexander had pulled her close. "This is what I dreamed of," he said. "Not just success, but this, us, building something real." Elena had kissed him, her heart full. "You're my home," she'd whispered, meaning every word. Flashbacks revealed Alexander's own struggles, adding depth to his strength. A year before meeting Elena, he'd faced a hostile takeover attempt by a rival CEO, Victor Crane, whose cutthroat tactics nearly tanked Voss Innovations. Alexander had fought back, not with dirty plays but with innovation, launching a breakthrough AI that outpaced competitors. The battle had left scars, sleepless nights, betrayals by trusted allies, but it taught him resilience, a trait he saw mirrored in Elena. "You're my match," he told her in Tuscany, his voice raw. "I've faced giants, but you face yours with grace." Back in the present, Elena's studio thrived, but challenges lingered. Zoe, the intern, struggled with self-doubt, her sketches brilliant but hesitant. Elena took her under her wing, sharing her own journey. "I was you once," she said, critiquing a logo. "Scared to take up space. But you're allowed to shine." Zoe's eyes lit up, her next design bolder, earning a client's praise. Marcus, too, saw Elena's potential, pushing her to pitch for a national campaign. "You're not just a designer," he said. "You're a leader." Elena hosted a dinner for her family at the penthouse, a warm evening filled with laughter. Clara, her mother, brought homemade apple pie, her eyes misty as she hugged Alexander. "You're good for her," she said, patting his cheek. Lila, fresh off a major legal victory in Chicago, toasted Elena. "To my sister, who turned pain into power." As the evening wound down, Elena stood on the balcony, Alexander at her side. The city sparkled below, a canvas of possibility. "I'm scared sometimes," she admitted, her voice soft. "What if it's too much? The studio, the clients, us." He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You're not carrying it alone. We're a team, and you're already proving you can handle anything." She smiled, the fear easing. Her studio was more than a business. It was her legacy, built from the ashes of betrayal. Derek and Sophia were distant memories, their schemes irrelevant in the face of her growth. She'd learned that strength wasn't about loud victories but quiet, steady steps toward a life she loved. That night, Elena sketched a new logo in her journal, its lines bold and free, a reflection of her heart. Harper Creative was just the beginning, and she was ready for whatever came next. A year after the reunion, Elena Voss stood on a stage at a design conference in San Francisco, her sapphire dress echoing the gown that had marked her triumph. The auditorium was packed, industry leaders and young creatives hanging on her words. Harper Creative had become a name synonymous with ethical design, its campaigns gracing billboards and apps worldwide. Elena's speech was the keynote, a moment she'd once dreamed of but never dared expect. "Strength isn't in revenge," she said, her voice clear and resonant, her hazel eyes scanning the crowd. "It's in rising, loving fiercely, and never looking back. Every design I create, every choice I make, is a step toward a world that values authenticity over flash. Build what matters, because you matter." The crowd erupted in a standing ovation, their applause a wave that lifted her heart. Alexander sat in the front row, his blue eyes shining with pride, his smile a quiet anchor. He'd been her biggest cheerleader, attending every major pitch, celebrating every milestone. As Elena stepped off the stage, he pulled her into a hug, whispering, "You're unstoppable." The conference was a culmination of Elena's journey, but subplots had woven through the year, enriching her life. Mia, inspired by Elena's courage, had launched her own bakery, its quirky cupcakes a hit in the city. She'd texted Elena that morning, "Killing it, girl. Coffee later?" Lila, Elena's sister, had won a landmark case in Chicago, crediting Elena's resilience as her inspiration. "You showed me how to fight without losing myself," she'd said during a recent visit. Derek Langford, meanwhile, was a ghost of his former self. He appeared briefly at the conference, lurking in the back, his suit ill-fitting, his eyes hollow. His career had imploded. Lawsuits, lost clients, a reputation in tatters. He tried to reach out to Elena months ago, a rambling email begging for forgiveness, but she deleted it without reply. Seeing her now, radiant and commanding, he understood the depth of his loss. He slipped out before the Q&A, a shadow, fading into irrelevance. Sophia Reynolds' attempts to reinvent herself had failed spectacularly. She'd moved to a new city, chasing influencer status, but her past clung like damp rot. Her social media posts, desperate bids for attention, were met with silence, her name synonymous with petty ambition. A former colleague had spotted her at a low-end networking event, her smile forced, her allure faded. She'd become a cautionary tale, a warning against building a life on others' ruins. Elena and Alexander, however, were building something extraordinary. They'd launched a charity initiative, merging her design expertise with his tech innovation to fund art programs for underprivileged youth. The project, called Create Forward, had already opened 2 community centers, their walls covered in murals inspired by Elena's sketches. "This is our legacy," Alexander said at the launch, his arm around her. "Not just ours, but for everyone who needs a chance to shine." Their home, a modern but warm townhouse filled with art and laughter, was a sanctuary. They hosted weekly dinners for friends and family, Clara's pies a staple, Mia's cupcakes a sweet addition. One evening, as they planned Create Forward's next phase, Elena reflected on her journey. "I used to think love was about holding on," she said, her voice soft. "Now I know it's about letting go, of pain, of fear, of people who don't see you." Alexander kissed her hand, his ring glinting on her finger. "You saw yourself. That's what changed everything." The chapter closed with them walking their garden, the same one where Alexander had proposed again under Napa stars. The air was cool, scented with lavender, the city a distant hum. Elena leaned against him, her heart full. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said, her voice a quiet vow. "You never needed to be," he replied, pulling her close. "You're the horizon, Elena, endless and bright." As they stood together, the stars above mirrored the light within her, a woman who'd walked through fire, not to burn, but to illuminate. Her story wasn't about revenge. It was about rising, loving fiercely, and building a life that shone. A year later, the Napa Valley vineyard where Elena and Alexander had wed glowed under a canopy of stars, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and possibility. The couple stood hand in hand, their silhouettes framed against the velvet night, lanterns casting soft golden circles onto the stone path. Elena wore a soft cream dress that flowed like a whisper, her chestnut hair loose, catching the breeze. Alexander, in a simple linen shirt, looked at her with a reverence that hadn't dimmed since their first meeting. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered, tilting her head to gaze at the constellations, a serene smile curving her lips. Alexander squeezed her hand, his heart pounding with quiet anticipation. "Not as beautiful as you," he said, his voice low and full of devotion. They stopped at the center of the garden, where a small table held 2 glasses of champagne, their bubbles catching the starlight. Elena arched a brow, amusement dancing in her hazel eyes. "Planning something, Mr. Voss?" He chuckled, his blue eyes gleaming under the warm light. "Always," he murmured. Then, slowly, he knelt before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Elena's breath caught, her hands flying to her mouth as tears pooled in her eyes. "Marry me again," Alexander said softly, his voice steady and full of love. "This time, not in hiding, not in fear of the past, but because you're the most extraordinary woman I've ever known, and I want the whole world to know you're mine." Elena could barely breathe, overwhelmed by the raw tenderness of the moment. "Alexander," she whispered, her voice breaking. He opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning ring, a solitaire diamond set in a delicate band, elegant and timeless. "Say yes," he said, his voice low, a plea wrapped in certainty. "Say yes to a life where you never have to fight to be loved again." She dropped to her knees in front of him, laughing through her tears as she threw her arms around his neck. "Yes," she breathed, the word a vow, a promise 1,000 times over. "Yes." Alexander held her tightly, burying his face in her hair, the scent of her lavender shampoo grounding him. In that quiet garden, under the stars, without fanfare or witnesses, they promised each other a life built on respect, healing, and an unbreakable love that asked for nothing but their truest selves. Weeks later, Elena stood at another gathering, but this one was different. It wasn't a reunion of old wounds or a stage for confrontation. It was a small, intimate party Alexander had thrown for friends and family to celebrate their new chapter. Soft jazz played in the background, laughter floated through the air, and the scent of fresh roses filled the bright sunroom where guests mingled warmly. Elena's cream dress shimmered under the lights, her natural beauty shining without effort. Alexander, never far from her side, introduced her proudly to everyone, not as someone who needed defending, not as someone who had to earn her place, but simply as his beloved wife. "She's the heart of everything good in my life," he said in a quiet conversation with an old friend, unaware that Elena overheard. Her heart swelled, so much she thought it might burst. Later, as the crowd thinned and evening deepened into a warm, velvety night, Elena and Alexander stepped onto their balcony overlooking the sparkling city. She leaned against the railing, the cool air brushing her skin, feeling more alive than ever. If someone had told me a year ago I'd be standing here, I wouldn't have believed them, she said, her voice soft with wonder. Alexander wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. You were always meant for more, Elena, he said. You just needed to walk away from the people too small to see it. She smiled, resting her hands atop his. Thank you for loving me when I forgot how to love myself. He kissed the side of her neck tenderly. You saved yourself, he whispered. I just held the light until you could see it again. Together, they stood in the gentle night, not needing grand declarations or noisy celebrations. Elena's story was a reminder. Strength doesn't always scream. Sometimes it simply walks away with its head held high. When someone tries to break you, don't fight for a seat at their table. Build your own. And like Elena, you'll find peace, love, and something better than you ever expected.